Have you ever gone to Vegas, booked through the direct website, put a deposit, and then the remaining balance is due the day of check-in? The same thing can apply to homes. It's called an EMD, or earnest money deposit, simply known as a deposit. A deposit on a home is essentially a good faith deposit to let the seller know that you have some skin in the game. And this deposit, assuming you pull through after your contingency period, gets applied to the total down payment of that home. Keep in mind that deposits are 100% negotiable. Use this as an anchor of negotiation. Deposits and down payments are very different, yet very similar, and tie together at the end of escrow, which I'll explain in just a minute. But before I jump into how the earnest money deposit is very different yet very similar to the total down payment package, it is important to remember that earnest money deposits, if you don't already know, is 100% negotiable. So don't get too stuck on the fact that, hey, I don't have enough money for an earnest money deposit and a down payment. No, it's all together. It's the same package. So let's say you want to put 20% down as a down payment, and the seller's asking for 1% of the purchase price for an earnest money deposit, just so they can have some good faith. They can feel like you have some skin in the game. Well, it's going to be a 1% earnest money deposit plus a 19% down payment, not 21%. It's going to be 19 and 1%. Why? Because at the end of the day, your earnest money deposit and your down payment come together as one at the closing table as one down payment, going towards your total purchase price, reducing your total amount financed for this home. And this is why it could feel very different for buyers during this transactional pipeline of buying a home. But at the end of the day, it ties together. It's all part of the process. Your earnest money deposit is going to get applied to your total down payment. Don't be afraid. Your deposit doesn't get gobbled up by anybody. It doesn't go to the seller. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't go to the realtors. It goes directly back into your newly acquired asset, held by a neutral third party like escrow. Now, be very careful. Deposits should never be handled in cash. If you ever bump into a realtor, that's not me, that's not anyone in my circle, and they ask for cash at a deposit, run as fast as you can. They're probably scamming you. Deposits should only be handled in 3 ways and should only be directed to an escrow company. And that's going to be either through check, direct wire, which is going to be the most popular option, or ACH transfer. I wouldn't worry too much about this deposit. If I were you, I'd worry more about the total down payment coming from your savings over the last several months or years, as its earning money deposit will be coming from your total down payment savings. When you enter escrow, typically you put an earnest money deposit, a deposit of good faith, but it is also very important to understand under what terms your earnest money deposit could be at risk. This is a very important conversation you want to have with your realtor before going under contract on a new home. Now, what is the reason in which you could lose your earnest money deposit? Well, if you go under contract, go into escrow, put your earnest money deposit, clear all your contingencies, and take the seller all the way to the finish line, and then at the closing table you say, hey, you know what, I have cold feet, I don't want this home anymore, I'm just gonna go home and not sign on this. You could be at stake of losing all of your deposit because you put the seller through so much stake. This seller of this home could already be under contract on another home, and it's just a headache. And so by nature, the seller should be fairly compensated for their time. Sometimes the sellers could be counting on the monetary proceeds from the sale of this property to buy their new property. So the idea that you just pulling out at the finish line is incredibly inconvenient for the sellers. Now, what's a way in which you can get your deposit back? Well, that's all going to depend on the language of your purchase contract, of course. But typically, what's very popular is when contingencies aren't met or cleared. So once in escrow, as a buyer, apart from securing financing and getting a hold of an appraisal, you as a buyer have the right to perform an inspection generally done by a third-party general inspector who's going to inspect things but not limited to roofing, foundation, plumbing, electrical, and so much more. If these situations are not met or clear, such as, let's say, the foundation came back with major problems, or there's major plumbing work, or things going on with the electrical system, you can actually pull back from that deal. If that scares you, move on to another house. And that's a way where you can secure and make sure that your earnest money deposit isn't at stake. Of course, it's all going to depend on the language of that purchase agreement and the terms. Again, this is generally how you can save your earnest money deposit from being at stake if contingencies aren't met or clear, or if the property has just too much damage to deal with, something realistic. This isn't going to be a blanket situation for everything. I cannot promise you that you're going to get your earnest money deposit back based if contingencies are cleared or not. It's just going to depend case to case and the language of the purchase contract. If you're having trouble knowing what that is, or want to know the terms in which your earnest money deposit could be at stake, make sure to talk to your realtor and your brokerage company. if you're in a situation where you want to buy but you feel like you don't have enough earnest money deposit saved or enough down payment saved, reach out to me. There are tons of good programs from my lenders that are able to help you get into your next home with very little down payment, and this earnest money deposit could always be negotiated. Everything is negotiable in real estate for the most part. So connect with me and my team and let me show you how this could be done.